I've spoken to Chinese students for the last 20 years to have access to anything in the world. Probably had a handful of students that actually knew what their parents did for a living. I was a first-generation college student. My mother was disabled. My father, he worked 3 different jobs all throughout my entire life. I actually started working for my father part-time in the summers, probably around 8 years old. My parents always told me, you're going to go to college.
It's in the DNA of the U.S. to consider diversity. We are a nation of immigrants, where students come from, what unique experiences they have, and what different kinds of thought they might contribute to a classroom discussion. They will continue to go forward in your life to have an impact on many different things you're doing. I grew up on a farm, and so every day, actually, before I went to school, I would go clean out my horses' stalls. Most of my classmates were from the Upper East Side of New York City, from very privileged backgrounds. Some of my classmates called me Corn Child. I met, a lot of different international students there. Had classmates from Saudi Arabia, Korea, Japan, Mexico, all over the world. It inspired me to do a gap year abroad. So I spent a lot of time overseas. Certainly inspired me to have an interest in international relations and, global studies as a whole.
I didn't have access to a lot of different resources, and I tried to take advantage of what was there for me. I actually ended up working with my high school volleyball coach as a mentor, as a college counselor, so I got paid to work in the admissions office as a tour guide and a clerical staff member. And that launched into 20 years of working in this industry. And I was fortunate enough to always build relationships and mentors, which I think is very important in the U.S. system of education, giving you referrals and references and helping guide you along the way.
Each year, the New York Times actually releases what they select to be very phenomenal college essays. Oftentimes, students think that they have to put forward their biggest accomplishment, something that nobody else has done. And oftentimes, these essays actually portray very personal, particular moments, their own progress over time. Another student, she wrote an essay about coming back to China and attending her aunt's wedding, and how her grandmother started to ask her when she would get married, even though she was only 15 years old. But my expectations for my own life are that I want to continue on. I want to be an accomplished, independent woman. Actually, for admissions officers, they love these kinds of stories because they're very relatable.
Even for those students that do have access to a lot of different resources, it's finding a way to take advantage of them and not just taking them for granted. A couple of boys that I had worked with 2 years ago, whose father owns hotels all around the world. And I asked them, I said, what are you going to do over the summer? And they said, well, we're going to go to one of these hotels, just hang out on the beach for the summer. And so I said, I want you to travel to each of the hotels and do a critical study of how the hotels are affecting the local community from a public policy standpoint. And I want you to look into finance and how they run in that particular country. And for parents, it's important to help leverage those networks that they have. Even if you don't come from much, to have the conversations. That then helps them to think about what they can do and see different paths that they could potentially take.
If parents can encourage their children to read more, to have a culture of learning and thinking about world issues, and even doing small things together, going to volunteer somewhere on the weekend together, to give them exposure to it and model that good behavior of being an interested and interesting person, that can go a very long way.